As all of you know, yesterday Mr. Robert R. Gilruth, the director of the Space Task Group, announced that 3 of the 7 astronauts had been selected to begin specialized work with the spacecraft and with the people that will be involved in the initial manned Mercury flights. In making the selection, Mr. Gilruth emphasized that at that time that all 7 of the astronauts are still in the program. They are eligible for possible selection for later manned ballistic and orbital flights. None of the men have been eliminated from the program. During the initial manned flights, the pilot who flies the mission will be supported by the other 6, who will maintain communications and technical support positions. In anticipation of your question, because of the research nature of the program, it is not possible to forecast specifically when the first manned flight is going to be flown. For your identification purposes, it may or may not be necessary, but from your left to right, L. Gordon Cooper, Donald K. Slayton, John H. Glenn, Alan B. Shepard, M. Scott Carpenter, and Walter M. Schirraw. Without any further words, we stand open to your questions.
When were you first told that the field had been narrowed from 7 to 3, Mr. Glenn, Shepard?
Go ahead, John.
Well, we knew just shortly before the announcement concerning it. I don't think we need to pin a date and hour to it. We knew shortly before the announcement.
Did you know that this election was coming up?
Well, yes, certainly. Sometime in the program it had to narrow down some, so we have been looking forward to this narrowing down.
Did this take
time for some time?
Did it become more pronounced in the recent week? This election?
I don't.
How do you pronounce the selection, Doug?
I don't follow you.
In other words, did you know that this the election board was actually considering these? All of you collectively going into these last few weeks?
Doug, I think the specific answer to this is that the selection process has been underway for over 22 months. We've been watching and evaluating medical and technical information all during that period. Obviously, this work has become more concentrated during recent weeks.
In what fashion and by whom were you told of the selection?
Well,
we were told as a group of 7 by Mr. Bob Gilruth, the director of Project Mercury, and the one that was responsible for making the decision.
When did Grissom learn?
We were told as a group of 7, Doug, all at the same time.
Well, when this took place, if Grissom's been in Bermuda?
Pardon?
he's only been out there
He's
a
only
couple
been
of
out there a
days.
few days.
And you knew about it before then, a couple days before the announcement.
He knew about it before he went to Bermuda, yeah.
Okay. What will the specialized training consist of? Can you give us a good rundown on just what these 3 men will go through in the next few weeks?
John, you want to start that one off?
Well, naturally, with shots coming up, we'll be working more closely with the equipment that we're going to use. There are a lot of particular things, like one model car to another. Different capsules have different characteristics, just as different cars do. So we'll be following the equipment very closely. We'll be doing last-minute work with the engineers on the project, so that we are thoroughly briefed and fully updated on any changes that may have occurred in the capsule or its systems. Be working closely with the booster people to make sure we have all those characteristics. We'll just be doing more intense work on the whole project, more intense work that we have been doing all along, becoming completely familiar and completely updated with all phases of the project, really. You can't single out any one phase and say that it's suddenly going to receive all the attention from here on in. It's just a general increase in activity across the board.
I think if I may add to that, you might ask one of the other four what their specific responsibilities are going to be, because we're still operating as a team of 7, and they have specific functions to perform during the flights as well.
I think yesterday's test is perhaps a good example. Deke, would you comment on what you did yesterday?
Well, I was in Mercury Control Center, which I think most of you here have been in at one time or another, and seen the operation there and the physical layout. I'm in what they call the capsule communicator spot, which our original idea was to have occupied by an astronaut. And basically the job on a manned flight here is to be in communication with the astronaut in the capsule throughout the flight, or as long as possible, at least, as long as he's within communications range. On unmanned flights, of course, we're just filling the position and getting accustomed to the normal checks necessary to this position.
Gordo, you and Scott have held on these spots too. How about the blockhouse?
Well, the man in the blockhouse will be the communication man with the man in the capsule prior to liftoff. He will be the man who switches the astronaut in the capsule on whatever communications channel he desires to be on, in communication with both control center, people working around the gantry, and people in the blockhouse. After liftoff, then this function shifts over to the astronaut in the Mercury Control Center.
One of the other interesting things that we will be doing, we did yesterday, we flew chase on the flight of the M82 spacecraft in an F-106, and the pilot of that airplane was Walter Schirra. Wally, I wonder if you could tell us what you saw.
Probably the most impressive sight you'd ever see. I don't think many people have looked down at a missile coming up at them. We've had a lot of work done on getting this flight prepared to get in the proper position as the booster came through what we consider the most critical altitude, which is about 34,000 feet. We timed the flight to arrive at 34,000 feet, get a good look at it at that point, and followed up through its flight as far as we could. We did manage to see the booster all the way through what we call BECO, where the booster engines were cut off, and about 2 or 3 seconds longer than that. I think it's worthwhile to add, in addition, that Don Slayton made a chase flight on the MR1 and MR2 shots. I made it on this shot. We're rotating each of us through these different spots, just as we are through the capsule communicator spot in the blockhouse, so that we can all get checked out in the various seats that we're working with.
What did you see yesterday?
So a bodacious booster coming by that was going a lot faster than the 106 will go.
Did you see separation?
Yeah, the booster won the race. Pardon?
Did you see separation?
We saw the booster section actually separate. The look angle, even then, though, we're, as I mentioned, about 34 or 35,000 feet. The separation, the booster is quite a little bit higher than that, and about 50 miles downrange. This is not capsule separation I'm talking about, but the booster engine separation. Capsule separation is quite a bit farther than where we can see.
Did you see the escape tower go?
No, that too is about 80 miles downrange.
Scotty,
What did it look like when it separated?
We merely see the whole lower section of the Atlas slide off toward the rear. And shortly after that, we could see the sustainer engine itself burning while the other two are terminated their burning.
Exactly what are you trying to accomplish with those chase flights?
Well, for one thing, if anything did go wrong, as you undoubtedly knew, we were anxious about this particular shot. This was a very important shot to us. Any coverage that we can get, such as visual, immediate, real-time coverage, is something that's worthwhile. We have practiced with these flights, and we felt that we could see a lot more from an airplane at a co-altitude with the booster than we could with data that we get much later on film.
You made no attempt to photograph them.
Yes, we had a camera with us.
Did you get usable pictures?
We haven't seen the pictures yet.
Have you gotten pictures before?
No, we have not.
First time you used the camera?
Yes. It's the first time anybody's chased a missile, too. We're developing new techniques here.
I thought you used the weapon 106 on the MR flight.
That is correct.
Well, he means in the program, as a program. I think it's the first time we've used an aircraft to chase
I didn't mean yesterday.
a large rocket like this.
Our problem is that we can't fit too big a camera back there. It has to be handheld, and I think many people in this room can sympathize with our problem.
One of the interesting things that has taken place in recent weeks in our program has been the simulation of actual flights. I was in the control center last week when a fellow by the name of Scott Carpenter was sitting at the capsule communicator position, and we actually flew a full Redstone mission simulation just as if it were manned. And I know I, for one, was almost completely carried away with the reality of the simulation. Scott, I wonder if you'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Well, what it amounts to is manning the blockhouse, manning the control center, and having one of the astronauts in the trainer, which itself can simulate the entire Redstone mission. We tie all of these together, and everybody gets practice at his particular position in a simulated launch. We can simulate any type of failure that's possible. We go through the entire count from T-minus 3 hours on down to about recovery time. Each person is given a number of failures that have to do with his own equipment by the not too kind simulation people.
I might inject here an important point. Mr. Walt Williams, our ops director, and Mr. Chris Kraft, our flight director, get their heads together and decide which kinds of missions and which kinds of failures might be critical down the road. And they merely give an instruction to the simulation people that they want to fly these kinds of missions. Well, then the simulations people put this thing together, but they never tell anybody what they put in it. So whatever occurs is a complete surprise.
Well, Scott, was this the only full simulated flight that's been flown?
No, we do 2 or 3 a day. It depends on how well people do it. Well, if many mistakes are made, then we have to stop and hash them out. If things go pretty smoothly, we can start right into another launch.
You've been doing 2 or 3 a day with a full Mercury control?
When possible. Sometimes the mistakes require so much discussion we can't go into another. And new points we discover new things, that we hadn't thought of before. And so it's not only training, but it's research as well. And we plan to do this quite frequently on a regular basis until the launch.
How does this compare with the old Link trainer?
They're not even in the same ballpark.
Fanciest Link trainer you ever seen.
Have you run any Atlas simulated?
I might answer that one just to clarify this a little. Yes, we run simulations of every mission that we run prior to the mission. In the case of the one we launched yesterday, where I was in control center, we had run simulations on this some 2 months ago. And we then picked up again last week and ran simulations for 2 days prior to the mission. We ran 2 days last week, rather, plus simulations on X-1 day. So you have each mission well simulated prior to ever firing it.
Well, would you, for chance, say, take the actual data from yesterday's flight and if we're running deviations or something, feed it into a program and run through it at a later date?
Certainly. Right, we have the actual tapes from the mission, which we can rerun through the computers if we desire.
I would like to ask both Al and Johnson, the most concerned, whether they feel that they would like to ride in the next Redstone flight. Do they feel that the program is far enough along that they could ride the next Redstone if you run? What they agree with both of them on that.
If they don't want it, we will.
What can you say after that? I think the answer, of course, is an overwhelming yes, a resounding yes. There are a couple of odds and ends that happened on the last Redstone flight that we wanted to consider a little more thoroughly before making a decision to go.
Howard, make sure you understand what his answer is. Now, he's answering your question about whether he wants to go on the next Redstone. Okay.
Go ahead, Al.
He's asking that.
That pretty well covers it. I think that the main deficiencies of the last flight have been fairly well spelled out for you in recent conferences, statements. And those are the items that we're discussing at the moment.
Charlie, on that capsule communicator, is it actually that this man is the tie-in or the link with the man in the capsule in flight, and all the other people surrounding him, and Chris Crafts help actually talk to the communicator, and he's the liaison?
He is the voice link, isn't that right, Scott?
That's right. A number of people can hear him, but as it's set up now, under normal circumstances, the only one who will talk to him is the capsule communicator.
Well, that's one part of this is free to core, this buddy system, this 7-man group idea, isn't it?
No, it's just that this man who has training, who has a good feel for the astronauts' problem and has spent a lot of time training in the control center is the best person to coordinate the activities of both.